Welcome to Executive Leaders Radio, your spot in the corner office, a radio show where executives share their secrets to success. Executive Leaders Radio.
You're listening to Executive Leaders Radio. This is your host, Herb Cohen, with my co-hosts Jeff Mack and Shannon Lane, Newmark Knight Frank, Drew Hanlon, Ben Drummond, D2 Integrated Solutions, Matthew Shapiro, Obermeyer, Frank Hennessy, Premier Planning Group, and Tiffany Wilson, the University City Science Center. Jeff, can you give us a rundown on who we have on the air today, pleise?
Sure, Herb, and I'd first like to thank Tiffany Wilson for hosting us here at the University City Science Center in Philadelphia. We have Hope Doyley Gay is General Counsel, VP of Administration at Spirovant Sciences, John Edwards, CEO of Drusolv Therapeutics, Dr. Bill Williams, President and CEO of Briacell Therapeutics, and Paul Fitzpatrick is President, PJ Fitzpatrick Executive Advisory Group.
Let's get to know our first guest, Hope Doyley Gay, Vice President and General Counsel of Spirovant Sciences. Hope, what is Spirovant Services? What are you guys doing?
Sure. We are a gene therapy company based in University City, area of Philadelphia, developing gene therapies for pulmonary diseases, including cystic fibrosis.
Mm-hmm. Tell me a little bit about where you're from, how many brothers and sisters, and where are you in the pecking order?
Sure. Born in Toronto, raised in South Jersey, moved to northern Delaware at 13, and I am the oldest of two sisters.
All righty. And tell me, 8 to 14 years old, what kind of stuff were you involved with, 8 to 14?
Brownies, Girl Scouts, piano, flute, chorus.
Wide variety of stuff. Jeffrey?
So, Hope, tell us about Mom and Dad. What were Mom and Dad doing when you were growing up for a living?
Sure. Mom is a registered nurse. Working on the floors, mostly ICU. Dad is an insurance agent.
So what do you bring to work every day from Mom and Dad, Hope?
Just that work ethic, just hard work to be the best at what you can do.
Drew?
Hope, I want to go back to music. You mentioned, playing the flute, the piano, singing. What was it about music that you loved?
The creation of something beautiful, but not by yourself, with others.
And when you were performing on stage, did your mom and dad get to see you?
Every single time. Yes.
And what was the impact of looking out and seeing mom and dad there?
Oh, you just fill with pride. I mean, they were always excited.
And what do you bring to work every day from that experience?
I'm performing for them. I represent them in everything I'm doing.
Wow. Matthew?
In the green room, Hope, you described your dad as actually tell us a little bit about your dad. Let's start with that.
Dad is from Jamaica, immigrated first to Canada, got his education, and he's just a hardworking guy.
And in the green room, you said to us that he showed the ability to pivot when necessary. What do you mean by that?
That's exactly right. His career was not a straight path. Doors closed, and he pivoted to the next door and made his move.
And so what did you learn by watching his ability to pivot that has to do with what you're doing today?
Life is not planned. It is not a straight line. Things happen, and you need to adjust and pivot.
Frank?
So, Hope, you mentioned that your dad's from Jamaica. How has having a multicultural background influenced you at Spirovant today?
I work with people from all around the world, and it's just you appreciate the differences in people and the diversity of cultures.
Mm-hmm. Ben?
Could you tell us about Girl Scouts and what was going on there?
Sure. I mean, Girl Scouts is just so much fun. You're learning something new every time. You're bonding with a group of people and your scout leaders. Just great fun.
That bonding with a diverse group of people, what does that have to do with what you're doing today?
It's the same thing. I'm working with a diverse team of people, whether culturally, from just diversity of thought, and just working as a team to get to learn new things together and to get things done.
Mm-hmm. Tiffany? Yes, Tiffany?
Yeah, you mentioned that you were the oldest of two girls. What was that relationship like with your sister?
Well, we're 19 months apart, so Mom almost treated us like we were twins, but I did have that protective older sister feeling towards her at all times.
And how did that influence your decision to go into law?
Just being able to help and protect people, to be able to help people, frankly. If my sister needed help, I wanted to help her. It's the same thing with law.
Mm-hmm. Shannon?
In the green room, you mentioned that your Aunt Essie was someone you always looked up to. Can you tell us more about her?
Yes, she's my mother's identical twin sister. So I have two mothers, and she is different than my mother. Not a scientist. She's a teacher, but she's outgoing and lively. So she's also a hard worker, but had a lot of fun as well.
And what did Aunt Essie teach you that you carry with you today?
Just to enjoy life. She's just such an enjoyable person. Big hugs, always a big smile, as was my mother, but just that's her personality, really outgoing.
And how does that affect the way, like bringing that into business? How does that translate?
That for my mother, you work hard all the time, but you need to have a little bit of fun as well. Keep it fun and keep it enjoyable.
Mm-hmm. Frank?
So, Hope, in the green room, you volunteered for us that your parents were people of faith. And I sense that's important to you, but you're a legal person and a science person. So I'm curious, how has faith impacted you?
Yeah, my parents are people of faith, always told me to put God first, but they were also people of action. So it's not faith, just blind faith. You need to prepare, you need to work hard, and you need to take steps to go where they believe God is leading you. But it's up to you. It's up to you as well.
Mm-hmm. Jeffrey?
So, Hope, you've been in big pharma, and you're with an exciting company now in the University City Science Center. What really lights your fire about what you're doing these days?
Just the seeing the science, seeing what we're doing from it's a discovery stage, research stage, and seeing it move through the clinic and seeing the people that we are able to help. It's just phenomenal being so close to it.
What are you most proud of?
I'm most proud of just from work, the team that we have. They're just dedicated. We understand what the mission is, and it's heads down and we want to achieve that mission.
Drew, what else are you thinking?
Yeah, I'm just curious, your dad being from Jamaica, I think of Jamaica as a place of love, family, passion, great music. What inspires you about Jamaica? And does your dad reflect these things?
He does. Jamaica's a tough country. It's a poor country as well. So a lot of good music, a lot of good food, but it's also a poor country, which is why he left for better opportunities in North America.
It's a poor country, but it seems like the people still know how to be happy.
They really do. It's that same faith, being happy no matter what the circumstances. You have family, friends, God.
What is there to be learned from that?
It means that your happiness is not circumstantial. It's not. It doesn't go by the moment.
And is that something you think about?
Absolutely. You have to stay grounded in all things. You can't waver. You have to stay true.
Does that inspire your culture at all?
It does. It inspires how I live my life. Things happen. Doors close, as I said with my father, but you have to keep steady.
Mm-hmm. Matthew, what are you thinking?
It's interesting when you talk about doors closing and opening, and you're working at a company where the CEO is a woman and you're like, her partner running the things, and big pharma is not a place where I think of women typically running things. Tell me what's going on there.
It's amazing. It's amazing. You see the diversity of our organization, a female CEO, women in all different organizations, diversity of cultures. It's the way it's supposed to be. Diversity of thought, personality. It's just a really engaging environment.
Why does that matter to you?
Because I like to learn new things. I like to be around different people. I don't want to be around people who are just like me.
Mm-hmm. Frank?
How do you share your faith? How do you share that groundedness with people? Does it come off naturally? Do you intentionally try to bring it to your business?
I don't try to intentionally bring it to my business. I hope it's evident in the way I lead my life and how I interact with people.
Mm-hmm. Shannon, what else are you thinking?
I was curious, you're into music, chorus, singing, flute, and the Girl Scouts. And I'm wondering, where do you see what you learned from music in your life today?
Sure. It's the preparation to get it right, constant practice to get it right. And then it's the team effort. I have my part. I was always a mezzo-soprano, but there are so many other parts, and just working together as a team.
Mm-hmm. What's the best part about your job, Hope?
The best part about my job is that I don't know what's going to happen from day to day. And that just makes it fun. I don't know what's going to happen when I walk in the door.
Mm-hmm. What's the website address of your organization?
Sure. We are Spirovant.com.
How do you spell that?
That is SPIROVANT.com.
We've been speaking with Hope Doyley-Gay, General Counsel and Vice President of Spirovant here on Executive Leaders Radio. Don't forget to visit our website. It's executiveleadersradio.com. To learn more about our executive leaders, it's executiveleadersradio.com. To learn more about our executive leaders, please stick around. We'll be right back after this brief message. You now can recognize your deserving business advisors on our nation's leading Business with Heart radio show, executiveleadersradio.com. Yes, you can recognize your deserving business advisors on our nation's leading Business with Heart radio show, executiveleadersradio.com. Simply visit executiveleadersradio.com, securely enter their info, and we'll reach out to spotlight your deserving business advisors on our nation's leading Business with Heart radio show, executiveleadersradio.com. Don't wait. This radio and online social media and search engine exposure is quite valuable to your advisors. Yes, this radio and online social media exposure is free and quite valuable to your business advisors who deserve to be recognized. Visit executiveleadersradio.com now to nominate your deserving business advisors. We're back. You're listening to Executive Leaders Radio. This is your host, Herb Cohen. We'd like to introduce John Edwards, CEO of Drusolv Therapeutics. John, what is Drusolv Therapeutics? What are you doing?
So we're a clinical stage drug company. We're developing a treatment for an eye disease called age-related macular degeneration, or AMD.
And where are you from originally? How many brothers and sisters? And where are you in the pecking order?
Grew up in Kansas City. I'm the middle of three brothers.
And 8 to 14, what kind of stuff were you up to?
Well, I was in scouts, went to school mainly, played a lot of tennis. But that's about it.
Mm-hmm. And Jeffrey.
So, John, you told us when your family moved to Kansas City, your father started a whole new division for an insurance company. What did you learn from your dad and you're a serial entrepreneur. What did you learn from your dad that helped you start so many new things?
Well, I got to watch him build this division of this company from scratch. I mean, there was nothing there. It was a Southern-based company. We moved to Kansas City, and he opened up the Midwest region, and he had to open up offices, hire people. There was nothing there. He built it from scratch.
Mm-hmm. And what's that have to do with who you are nowadays?
Well, that's what I do as an entrepreneur. So when you're an executive of a small company, there's nobody there to help you. You start from the beginning on things. It's not a company you're trying to optimize. It's a company you're trying to make survive.
Mm-hmm.
So you're building,
yes,
just like your dad did.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Drew?
John, you mentioned having a real passion for school. What was it about school that you really loved?
Well, I like learning things. So I have a curious mind, and I like solving problems. So I tended toward math and science because that's the problem type things. And I like doing the work. I actually liked getting the answers.
And what was the impact of being a great student and curious on what you're doing today?
Well, of course, it prepared me to want to go to school and learn more, but it also prepared me for building companies, right? To build a company successfully, you have to really understand it. You have to get into all the nitty gritty of why it works and why it doesn't work, what the issues are, and attack those things. And, being a good student helped me learn those things.
Matthew?
Yeah, John, you described a childhood playing tennis. I'm curious, what attracted you to the game of tennis?
Well, my mother was a tennis player, not a professional one, but that was her passion. And so I got that from her, but it was also her way to distract us. It was her way in the summertime to send us away and occupy us and have us do something where we could be on our own and not underfoot for her.
And through the years of playing, you told us it wasn't really about winning for you. What was it about?
No, it was about having fun. It was about being with other people and just enjoying something. It was a pastime.
Which is an interesting take on sports, right? Lots of people tell you it's all about winning. And you're saying it's fun and it's a pastime. You spent so much time doing it. What does that tell us about you that helps us to understand you better as the CEO that you are now?
Well, yeah, you want to win when you're a CEO in the sense of you want to make your company successful. But the real thing you want to do is produce a product that's useful to people. Like, I'm in the business to cure blindness. I'm not in the business to make, to $1 billion. But the incentive to helping me make that business that'll cure blindness is the financial incentive, right? And so it's a combination of doing something you want to do and striving to succeed, because that gets you to where you want to be, which is doing something you want to do.
Ben?
John, you grew up as the middle child. What was the relationship like with your siblings?
Not very close. I didn't have much in common with my older brother, and I was too much older than my younger brother to know him very well. So we were pretty independent as a threesome.
And what did that teach you?
Well, independence, reliance on yourself.
How do you carry that with you today in your entrepreneurial spirit?
In the sense that you have to be responsible, right? You have to, if you want it done, you've got to make sure it's done. You can't just assume somebody else will do it for you.
Shannon?
John, in the green room, you described yourself and your family as Southerners. I'm curious, where do you see your Southern roots show up today?
Well, it's a big cultural change to go from the Deep South, which is where I was, to Kansas. And you learn that people are different, and you learn that you're going to be treated differently. I had a big Southern accent when we moved there, so everybody thought I was stupid. And so you learn to treat other people and learn about differences.
Tiffany?
You love science, you love math, you went to MIT to become a scientist. What was the inspiration or kind of the pivot point to become an entrepreneur and a CEO?
Yeah, because a professor there told me that you had to make a choice. You couldn't do both. And I was defiant about that. I wanted to do both. I wanted to find some way where I could combine my love of science with, building a business at the same time.
And Frank?
So, John, I'm curious. You described yourself as self-reliant and independent. And as a serial entrepreneur, your core is about problem solving. So I'm curious, what's your approach to problem solving, and do you depend on others?
Yeah, being independent doesn't mean you don't need others. It means you need to assimilate for yourself what others tell you. So you ask as many questions as you can. You tap into as many resources as you possibly can, and then you rely on yourself to synthesize this and pick out what's right among all the things you hear.
That's problem solving. Where did you learn that process from?
Well, school. Doing math problems is the simplest example of solving a problem. You get to an answer. But all the way through science as well, you've got mysteries that are not understood, and you got to figure out what the truth of that mystery is.
So I'm curious, how do you react if you can't solve the problem when you want to solve the problem?
Oh, you don't give up. You persist. Right? You go to other resources to help you if you don't know. You read a lot. You talk to other people. You ask questions.
Ben?
John, in the green room, I asked you why AMD, and I was thinking maybe there was a tie to the specific vision, but you answered and said it was more so about the opportunity. And I get the sense you weren't speaking of financial opportunity. What was that opportunity? What type of opportunity is that?
Oh, so I was attending a lecture at University of Alabama at Birmingham. And a guy talked about something he had done as part of his research, and it immediately clicked with me that this was going to solve a need, that there was this unmet need that what this guy had done would solve. And it happened to be in the field of AMD.
What does it say about you that your definition of opportunity isn't about financial, but of the scale of the problem you're solving?
Well, I don't know. They're not unlinked, right? The one is a means to the end of the other. If you don't have the financial incentive to try and solve the problem, then you're never going to get it solved. So I don't think it's one or the other.
When you were a kid in school, what were your favorite subjects?
Physics and math, calculus.
What? You like that stuff?
Absolutely. I actually did my homework.
You did your homework?
Yes.
Because you liked doing your homework?
Yeah, because it was a set of problems to solve. And so you go home and you figure out how to solve these problems, and then you get the right answer.
Matthew?
Yeah, I'm curious. When Shannon asked you before about being a Southerner, you identified a problem, which was people thought you were stupid because of your accent. Tell me how you attacked that problem. What do you remember that when you were a kid?
Well, so you you get the best scores on the tests. You pay attention and do your homework. You address that by showing them they're wrong.
When you were in high school, you were like the top of your class. You even told us that the other kids sometimes needed help with their homework and you helped them. But then you went to MIT where, everybody's brilliant. What's the impact of going from the top guy to just middle of the pack with everybody else? Well,
it's of course unsettling initially, but then it's life-changing in the sense that you realize that there's all this wealth of other people out there that know other stuff, and it makes you competitive. It makes you realize that you can't just coast. You're going to have to work hard if you're going to get something, and there's lots to be gotten from these other people you're surrounded with.
And has that experience influenced what you do today and how you do it?
Oh yeah, in many ways. One way is to go to academia for the ideas that I've worked on. I'm a serial entrepreneur. This is my 5th startup that I'm working on. All of them came out of academia. All of them came out of being curious and tapping into other people's intellect, not just my own.
So you're telling me the variety of businesses, the 5 businesses you started, all have come from ideas, working from a blank piece of paper, like your dad started that insurance office?
That's correct.
Mm-hmm.
But notice they were somebody else's ideas.
Mm-hmm. But you were able to take them the next level, put the business around the idea. Well, what's the website address of this organization known as Drusolv Therapeutics?
It's drusolv.com. drusolv.com.
We've been speaking with John Edwards, CEO of Drusolv Therapeutics, here on Executive Leaders Radio. Don't forget to visit our website. It's executiveleadersradio.com. To learn more about our executive leaders, we'll be back in a moment right after this quick break. We're back. You're listening to Executive Leaders Radio. This is your host, Herb Cohen. We'd like to introduce Dr. Bill Williams, President and CEO of Briacell Therapeutics. Bill, what is Briacell Therapeutics? What are you guys up to?
Briacell Therapeutics develops cellular immunotherapies for cancer.
Wow. Where are you from originally? How many brothers and sisters, and where are you in the pecking order?
So I'm from Long Island, New York. I'm the youngest of 3 brothers.
All righty. Jeffrey?
So, Bill, back in Long Island, Mom and Dad, you told us they were both in the pharmacy world. What did you learn from Mom and Dad that you use at Briacell today?
So I think one of the things was a very deep interest in science. My father always approached things from a scientific perspective, and that rubbed off.
What else you thinking, Jeff?
Well, so did you ever go to work with your dad?
Yeah, Christmas Eve and other busy times, we'd go into the store and help with the cash register and things like that. Well, also, he was an entrepreneur. He opened his own pharmacy.
So you learned you have your own company. You're developing your own drugs. What was your father's influence in your life in heading this direction?
Yeah, I think there was numerous. I mean, one was that the whole scientific orientation. He was an instructor in microbiology at St. John's University, where he met my mother. So he always had a deep interest in science. But also, unfortunately, he was claimed by esophageal cancer at a young age, 55. And so that also gave me some incentive to try to develop therapeutics in this area.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Drew?
Yeah, but what was going on for fun as a youth?
Yeah, so I was involved in a lot of different activities. I was in Cub Scouts, and then later on in baseball, also wrestling and football, and then I was in the chorus, and I played in the band, played some percussion.
What's that tell us about you? That's a wide variety of activities. What's that tell us?
Yeah, I mean, I like to do a lot of different things. I like to keep busy, and I tend to go from one thing to the next, and also to stick to it. And wrestling is probably the prime example where you train and you practice a lot, and then you go out there and you wrestle a 6-minute match. So a lot of preparation and I understand that that's really important today.
I was just going to ask, has that impacted what you do today?
Yeah, absolutely. It's been said that genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. And I don't mind rolling up my sleeves and doing the work. It's, Mahatma Gandhi once said that there's two types of people in the world. There are those who do the work and those who take credit for the work. And he said, always try to be in the first group because there's much less competition there.
Frank?
So, Bill, in your experience, you've had to succeed in many roles. I see a business executive. I see a teacher. I see a research scientist. I'm curious, which of those roles do you most identify with?
I think mostly with the research scientist. It's what I've been doing the longest. I've been very oriented that way all the way from back when I was in high school. I did research, and it's the thing that I probably enjoy doing the most.
How does it prepare you to run a business, being a research scientist?
I think, research is always an exploration into the unknown. And if you think you've got the answer figured out before you do the experiment, you're almost always wrong. And so you have to also be nimble and able to change directions. And so that's also very applicable to being an executive.
It sounds like all those roles are important, though, in running a business, because it goes back to being a business executive and a teacher.
Yes, absolutely. You have to teach and learn at the same time.
Matthew?
Bill, you're the youngest of three brothers. Tell us, what's that got to do with who you are today?
Well, my oldest brother actually died when he was 7 years old of polio, and sent the family into a bit of a tailspin. And we had some serious dysfunctional years, but then through the AA program, my father became sober, and it really transformed our whole family.
Tell me, what was the effect of that dysfunctional period that you're talking about on you?
Well, there was obviously a lot of bad formation, so to speak, that happened in my character. I tended to retreat to comic books and science fiction novels. But, then when we came out of that, I learned, how to change the way that I was. One of the main prayers of the AA program is God grant me the serenity to accept the things that I cannot change, the courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And, you understand that the thing you can change is yourself, and the thing you can't change is other people. And having that wisdom actually has helped me throughout my entire life.
And could you focus that specifically in your role as president and CEO of Briacell? How does that background of being able to change yourself, what does that have to do with running a company?
Yeah, I think that, that awareness is really key. And, if you take a course like the 7 Habits of Highly Successful People, one of the things they tell you is to always be willing to accept no in a negotiation. And if you understand that the only thing you have control over is yourself and as a CEO of your own company, then, you know that when you go into negotiations that, sometimes you have to accept no. You have to be able to be to adjust to different situations, and I think that that's paid off.
Mm-hmm. Ben?
But what did you pick up growing up in Long Island?
Well, New York is a very fast-paced place. I think sarcasm is thought to be probably the highest of the virtues. If you have something nice to say, why bother? But it's also a very diverse place. There's a lot of competitive nature in New York. It's a great training ground for life itself and also for being in the business world.
Mm-hmm. What does that pace and that motivation to always think about the next thing to do? How do you carry that with you at Briacell?
Yeah, no, I have a friend, Marty Kreitman. He's actually received the MacArthur Genius Award out at University of Chicago in population genetics. And he says that he's the kind of person that lives in the moment, but his wife, who's the head of his department, always lives in the future. And that's actually the same for me. I tend to always be thinking about what's next, what's the next thing to do, what do I have to line up next? And that organizational kind of mindset, I think, helps in running a company.
Shannon?
Well, you mentioned to Matthew that after your brother passed, your family went through 10 years of, hardships and some dysfunction there. I'm curious, what was your outlet during those tough times?
Yeah, I think it was mostly reading comic books and reading science fiction and, escaping into other things like that.
And what were you reading about?
Oh, The Incredible Hulk. Arthur C. Clarke Foundation, Isaac Asimov, all these different scientific writers.
And how was that able to take you away from what was going on at home?
Yeah, I mean, it's basically like retreating into, these fantasy worlds and, not having to deal with what was right around me. And, fortunately, I was able to come out of that later on through the help of the Alateen program.
Mm-hmm. How's that having an effect on who you are nowadays?
Yeah, I mean, I think it has an effect in many ways. It has an effect in terms of having had that deep interest in science fiction. I can now see a lot of the things that were written about back then becoming, reality in today's world. And I really enjoy being a part of trying to bring some of those things to reality.
Mm-hmm. Tiffany?
You talked to Drew about your sports growing up, and I'm fascinated. You're a wrestler, you're a football player, baseball player, theater, chorus, playing an instrument. That's a lot of different types of team members and different parts of your brain. How has that really influenced and kind of translated to your leadership style today?
Yeah, I think there's a number of things. One, of course, in being in different groups like that, you have to be able to deal with a lot of different people and realize the contribution that each of them makes. And I think that that's really a key thing in running a company. So that clearly there's that part, but there's also the 99% perspiration part, that there's so much preparation that goes into, as Hope said earlier, into any kind of performance and things like that you have to do the work to get it right before you can actually go out there and perform.
Jeffrey?
Bill, you've run some major research programs in your life at University of Pennsylvania. And you mentioned you had 3 kids. What have you learned from your children?
So, I think that your children teach you really what it is to be an adult. Because, and now they have their own children and they're learning, and I just love seeing this process. From the first moment that you hold that little son or daughter in your arms, you realize that you have a whole level of responsibility in life that you just never had before. And that you have to strive not only to take care of that person, but to make the whole world a better place for them to live in. And so...
Mm-hmm. What is the website address for Briacell Therapeutics?
It is Briacell.com, Briacell.com.
We've been speaking with Dr. Bill Williams, President and CEO of Briacell Therapeutics, here on Executive Leaders Radio. We'll be back in a moment right after this quick break. Don't go away.
Recognize your deserving business advisors on our nation's leading Business with Heart radio show, Executive Leaders Radio. Yes, you can recognize your deserving business advisors on our nation's leading Business with Heart radio show, ExecutiveLeadersRadio.com. Simply visit ExecutiveLeadersRadio.com, securely enter their info, and we'll reach out to spotlight your deserving business advisors on our nation's leading Business with Heart radio show, ExecutiveLeadersRadio.com. Don't wait. This radio and online social media and search engine exposure is quite valuable. Yes, this radio and online social media and search engine exposure is quite valuable to your business advisors who deserve to be recognized. Visit ExecutiveLeadersRadio.com now to nominate your deserving business advisors for free exposure.
Back. You're listening to Executive Leaders Radio. This is your host, Herb Cohen. We'd like to introduce Paul Fitzpatrick, president of PJ Fitzpatrick Executive Advisory Group. Paul, what is PJ Fitzpatrick Executive Advisory Group?
I provide fractional C-level services and board engagements to healthcare companies, medical device companies, startups, early stage, small companies.
Where you're from, and how many brothers and sisters, and where are you in the pecking order?
Andover, Massachusetts. I'm one of 3, youngest.
And tell me, what kind of stuff was going on with you 8 to 14?
Lots of different stuff. Music, a couple of sports, gymnastics, a little bit of wrestling.
What do you think the primary activity or the primary incident in your 8 to 14 development was?
Well, my oldest brother drowned when he was 8 years old. I was 5 at the time, actually. And so that was
your
pretty.
Your oldest brother drowned. Tell us
correct.
A little bit more about that, please.
Well, it was a accident occurred. Our family had drove out to Montana for the first time for a family get together, and we were swimming in a river, and four of my relatives passed away, drowned. My brother, 2 cousins, and an uncle.
And were you there?
I was. I saw the whole thing.
Frank?
That's tragic. Let me try to make it positive. 2 minutes in talking to you, Paul, it's evident that you're motivated to make a difference in people's lives. And I'm wondering where that comes from. When did you first acknowledge or see somebody making a difference in your life?
Well, I think I'd never consciously thought about that accident and how it affected me. But I saw it through my parents. I mean, they didn't skip a beat. They made sure we were continued to be happy, supportive. I mean, don't get me wrong. There were a lot of tears, and I can remember that vividly. I mean, I was only 5 at the time, but they were our rock, at the time.
So how did you persevere? What was the lesson there that they taught you?
Yeah. So you continue on. Right. You soldier on, you try to make better, you get involved in things, you don't allow that to consume you and become you.
Is that the positive difference that you're trying to make?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Tiffany?
After high school, you went to paramedic school, and knowing about this tragedy you witnessed and experienced, one can kind of draw that correlation there of what the inspiration for that. What else was you told us something about in the green room, other influences to drive you to paramedic school and get involved in this. Tell us about that.
Well, I wish I could be so lofty that this awful tragedy in my younger days was the inspiration for me to become a paramedic. It was actually a TV show, Emergency Squad 51, and I so wanted to be Johnny Gage, And
what was it about Johnny Gage that fascinated you?
His personality, but more the job he was doing, saving lives, changing every day, never knew what he was getting into, and always, making a difference.
Mm-hmm. Jeffrey?
So, Paul, when you were a student, you mentioned you weren't like the most studious kid, and maybe even some kids thought you were the class clown. But that role makes everybody else feel good. I mean, you're trying to make people feel comfortable. And you're in the people business. I mean, what did your upbringing, how did that make you a people person?
Well, that's exactly right. My mom was like that. I mean, she tried to make everybody happy, didn't want conflict. And so through that, I learned that was one of the best ways actually to be an entrepreneur, because when you're an entrepreneur, you're bringing all sorts of different stakeholders together. And you've got to make them coalesce and build consensus. And the easiest way to do that is get them at ease, have some humor.
Matthew?
Yeah, Jeff mentioned the class clown thing, but I'm curious, if we go back to when you were 8 to 14, how would your friends describe you?
I think they would describe me as a class clown. They would also describe me as musical, because I was very involved with a cappella choir, playing the piano, did a little singing, that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Not for my athletic prowess. Let me tell you, they would not say that.
How did that relationship with your friends when you were 8 to 14 and how they say, what does that got to do with what you're doing today?
Well, I tell you, again, these are lifelong friends. I mean, the folks I grew up with, those are my closest friends today. And building those relationships is what I do in business. I've started 10 companies. I build relationships in order to build those companies and get them to an exit.
Drew?
Yeah, so Paul, you're a serial entrepreneur, and it sounds like you started your first business when you were 11. Can you tell us about what you were doing then?
So at 11, I actually worked for a farmer picking vegetables. And it wasn't until I was more like 15 where my grandparents had been farmers, immigrants from Armenia. And I asked my grandmother, hey, could I plow up a couple of acres? I want to start a farm. And she said, sure, in Armenian. She didn't speak English. And I did.
And what was a lesson you learned from that experience that you bring to work every day?
Oh, well, part of it's self-reliance, part of it's persistence, patience, and then figuring out problems as they face you. And that's a challenge.
Ben?
Well, I understand your grandparents were entrepreneurs themselves. Can you tell us what you learned from them specifically?
Yeah. So I never thought of them as entrepreneurs until this question sort of arose in the last couple of years. People ask me that. But again, starting something from nothing and having the imagination to build that and do it successfully. But then they didn't think of it that way. They thought of it as survival because they were running away. They were escaping a Holocaust that was going on in Armenia.
Starting something from nothing. How has that relayed into your career?
I've done that over and over and over again, from the farm to iMedical staffing to healthcare innovations I can rattle off a bunch of them. So,
Shannon?
Well, earlier you mentioned that you sang, you played the piano, you were also involved in the choir, you wrestled, and also were involved in gymnastics. I'm curious, all of those things, when you're competing as an individual, but they're all for the greater team. How does that relate to what you're doing nowadays?
Again, that's just part of being an entrepreneur, part of starting companies, part of having this team that you are building. You've got to demonstrate leadership, but you've got to do it in a way that gets your team marching with you and not going off in different directions. And I think that's, gymnastics is the same way. You may compete individually, but it's all to contribute to the team being successful.
Paul, what's good enough? Do you ever see yourself retiring?
I don't think so. My kids always say, one of the things I always say is that was good, but I've always got the but. It could be better if. And they always tease me about saying that.
Mm-hmm. Jeffrey?
A young graduate today from college going into life sciences, what advice would you give Paul?
Wow. Pick a particular area that you're passionate about that can serve the common good, that can actually change, even if it's one person's life, and then balance that with a financial reward.
Mm-hmm. Drew, Frank, you guys?
Yeah, so starting something from nothing. I'm wondering, where do you get your most satisfaction, Paul? Starting the project, working the project, or completing the project?
Starting the project.
Why is that?
Because it's creative. It's taking something from nothing, pulling all these things together and making it work. And once you see it going, you can sit back and say, wow, there was nothing there. The first paramedic service I put together was like that.
Drew?
Yeah, I'm just curious. It's funny. You kind of mentioned you're not the most athletic person, but you took on wrestling as a sport, which is pretty tough. What's the lesson to be learned there, getting your butt kicked on the wrestling ball?
Yeah, learn how to run fast.
Matthew?
Yeah, earlier when Bill was talking about sci-fi stuff in his answers, you were nodding along vigorously as he was talking about reading sci-fi. What was that all about?
Oh, I'm a big Star Trek, Star Wars fan, and Bill is so right.
What do you like about that stuff?
Oh, just the futuristic about, like the what was it, the tricorder, and, they could just cure something by, putting something over it, and, just all that was very fascinating.
What's the website address of this organization known as PJ Fitzpatrick Executive Advisory Group?
FitzpatrickConsultants.com.
We've been speaking with Paul Fitzpatrick, president of PJ Fitzpatrick Executive Advisory Group here on Executive Leaders Radio. Jeffrey, can you give us a rundown of who we've had on the show today, please?
What a great show, Herb. I'd like to thank Tiffany Wilson, president and CEO of the University City Science Center, for hosting us today. We had Hope Doyley Gay, general counsel and VP of administration, Spirovant Sciences, John Edwards, CEO of Drusolv Therapeutics, Dr. Bill Williams, president and CEO of Briacell Therapeutics, and Paul Fitzpatrick, president, PJ Fitzpatrick Executive Advisory Group.
I'd like to thank my co-hosts, Jeff Mack and Shannon Lane, Newmark Knight Frank, Drew Hanlon, Ben Drummond, D2 Integrated Solutions, Matthew Shapiro, Urbameyer, Frank Hennessy, Premier Planning Group, and Tiffany Wilson, University City Science Center, for giving me a hand structuring the structuring the questions. Hope you're providing our listening audience an educational and entertaining show. Thank you for joining us today, and please have a nice day. Bye-bye.